This is Ned's AFL Unpopular Opinions.
Welcome to this week's Ned's Unpopular Opinions. We're a couple of men down and they're very, very brave men leaving their host chairs because one's done it in the past and never to be seen again, never to return. So Ryan and Jack aren't here today, so it's just me and the great Alistair Lynch.
Rocky, I fear it was reference to the feathers over the last couple of weeks.
Yes, they're both thinning and they may have just needed a bit of time off for themselves.
Yeah, I know. So we might have to pull back on that.
And speaking of, we've seen Andrew Dillon come out this week. We're in the middle of the bye.
Well, he's got feather issues as well.
Well, he does as well, actually. But we're in the bye rounds and people taking time off. He seems to enjoy the 5 weeks of byes. I can't stand it.
Nah. I reckon they've got to adjust. It sounds like they're not going to. But I think we've discussed it a few times on here. Just over 2 weeks, break it up. 4 games 1 week, 5 the next. That'll do. And just get it done. It's spread out far too long. And probably during that period we had a few poor matches as well, because there is a chasm between the top 9 and the bottom 9. Well, considering Sydney, probably the exception there. But got to knock it over much quicker. It was dragged on far too long.
We actually spoke about it. It was the top 9 teams versus the bottom 9 teams last week. We spoke about it in the snapshot. Had the punters followed us in that, they may have had a bit of a fill-up last week. Every favourite one.
Every favourite one, which
so
was
Sydney were $1.64.
Yeah, so they were the exception, weren't they? Because they were outside of
Fremantle, yeah. So I think we're starting to see the gap in the competition, and sort of the ladder reflects that a little bit. I'm still on the Sydney train. I think they can still make it.
Well, if you're going to make those outlandish statements a couple of weeks ago that they could still win the flag, I suppose you've got to hang in there.
They're potentially still there, but I mean the top 9 have set themselves almost apart. Sydney and Port Adelaide are on the 28 points. They're still with a pulse. I don't think Port Adelaide can probably make it now with what we've seen on the weekend, some severe injuries out of that. We'll get the wash up whether Radaglia, I think he looked like he was going for surgery on the hamstring.
Looked nasty.
Sam Powell-Pepper obviously as well. But that game, the first quarter of Brisbane and Port Adelaide, if the AFL wanted to sell the game, replay that to everyone. I think that was the best quarter of footy I've seen in potentially a decade. I thought it was outstanding.
There was some great speed. And we know what Port Adelaide, when they get up and running, they do play exciting footy. And then almost Zach Bailey scruffed it by the throat and put on a clinic in that 10-minute period just before quarter time, which was the difference in the game, really. It was just that block. That was the major difference that Port couldn't rein in the end.
I think it is. I think against the Brisbane Lions, if you want to beat them this year, when they have that 20-minute burst that they have, you've got to limit it to 2 or 3 goals. You can't allow them to kick 8, which unfortunately Port Adelaide let them kick 8 on the bounce and it was game over. It's too far back, but I thought that was a cracking game of footy and Brisbane really needed to win it. They sit second now. I don't think anyone will catch Collingwood, so they've wrapped up that top position, but then it's a lot around that from second to 9th. I'll throw in 10th because I want to keep Sydney alive, but it's going to be a bit of a seesawing back half of the season, which is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So who's it down to for the flag? I mean, you got Sydney still a chance.
You've got
for the
Sydney
flag.
in there. I think Collingwood at their best.
So
Brisbane at their best.
Absolutely, Collingwood, Brisbane.
I'm not convinced on Adelaide yet. I know they sit third on the ladder. I think they'll finish top 4. They've got a reasonably soft draw on the way home.
They were just a bit off.
Yesterday again against Melbourne, but you can often get that just after the bye, a couple of weeks after the bye. I think Geelong still, and Western Bulldogs. I think.
So that's it. So first and second, 4th and 6th. And I'll tend to agree. And Gold Coast are home, aren't they?
I'm not.
Well, they weren't convinced.
I'm not convinced they.
So what, they could lose the next 3, couldn't they?
Well, they've got a tough run home. So they've probably the softest draw so far. They've got Collingwood on Friday night, which would be the first Friday night game, I would have
imagine
thought,
so,
at Carrara, barring the COVID year. Adelaide Crows away, Brisbane at home, and then they get the soften of Richmond, Carlton, then the Giants again, and Essendon, Port Adelaide. So it's not the easiest run home. The next 3, they could be right back in the pack, though.
Well, you know what could help them is Freo. Because Freo have got to go up. So Freo have got to win games.
They certainly do, and they've got Hawthorn this weekend, which is no easy game.
No easy game. Well, they've been good. They've had a good 6 weeks, and I think the last couple of Freo games that I've done, I think they've been really good. They've moved the ball well. They're set up behind the ball. They've obviously got some star players. They'd be disappointed with the result on the weekend because they got absolutely obliterated in your department in stoppages.
Yeah.
It was almost embarrassing how much they got smacked. Oh, and speaking of, did you hear my interview with Brodie Grundy post-game? And I asked him about the dominance in stoppages. He said, "Oh, did we?" I said, "Well, you were 9 zip and centre clearances at one stage, and you kicked 5 goals from centre bounce." "Oh, did we really?"
Yeah, I think Ruckman don't quite see it. I've been big on this for a number of years. That Ruckman better game without him, but in
saying that, he was good, real good. Yeah. He's had a bloody good month, and we're chatting. I think we're chatting during the game. I spoke to him after the interview. Actually, I reckon 2019, 18, sort of. He was All-Australian ruckman at that time, I think, and his ability to run around the ground like a midfielder was incredible. You just stood there at the games live and watched him and thought, geez, you're flying. He's back doing that now, which is something we haven't seen for 5 or 6 years, and he just looks happier, fitter, and he's going to cause some problems with that Swans team.
I think they'll upset a few on the way home. We just had a quick look at their draw. It's going to be really tough for them to make it. I know I'm on their bandwagon. They've got to beat Brisbane up here and Geelong at home and the Giants as well. So they've got 3. But they've got a couple of nice games. But for him to be able to expose a Darcy, etc., in like those and bigger...
Jackson,
and then Jackson as well. Jackson's obviously the one that can cover the ground like Grundy does. So he's had a massive game there for Sydney.
On that game, and then we'll get back on the Port Adelaide game... we see the raw emotion of players when they're copping an injury, and the frustrations of being stuck in the medical room for a long period of time. Like Tom Papley with a foot injury for most part of the season and comes back, now has snapped a hamstring, and just devastating for these guys when they know they're out of the game for an extended period. But the most one and the rawest one was a former teammate of yours, Sam Powell-Pepper, who did his ACL. Like, obviously, I don't think it's totally... The scans would probably be today.
Oh, I think it was pretty, convincing.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what, to be fair, speaking to Port Adelaide at 3/4 time, they know it's an ACL.
Yeah.
They just didn't want to go with it because of the scans. But just to see that raw emotion of a man that's worked hard at his trade, had an ACL, now the other leg, he's done that knee, and he knew straight away.
Yeah.
He knew what it was. And you could even see that once that pain of the ACL snap, he started running the boundary line thinking, oh, no, it might be a chance. But it's just devastating. Tell us a little bit about him, because a lot of us don't get to know Sam, but he's one of those almost spirit animals on the field. And he was at the third quarter. The third quarter, he turned the game, or the second quarter.
Second quarter, the game,
he just absolutely ripped Brisbane apart in a great effort.
Well, yeah, in that first quarter, if he had got someone, they'd be still picking him up out of the Gabba turf now. He came through a couple of times and just missed, but I mean, his journey and story's been an exceptional one. Obviously, a childhood that wasn't blessed with opportunities and whatnot that some kids have. He certainly wasn't a private schooler or anything like that. And he's done it the tough way. And then he had his challenges at Port Adelaide. Could have easily found himself on the scrap heap and gone down a different direction. Moved in with Travis Boak, who showed him about what it is to be a professional, what it is to be an AFL footballer.
Because he was a failed midfielder, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he would still be a midfielder, but Port sort of...
Failed midfielder. That's wrong to say failed, but...
They moved him, and I think he pinch hit it on the weekend and still does it. He plays that half-forward role really well, but he certainly started as an inside midfielder, had some off-field issues. He's straightened them up and been exceptional. He's got a young family now. He actually had his third daughter during the week.
Yeah.
So I spoke to him after the game, and I just put that into perspective. Like, yes, it's shattering to do your knee, but he goes, look, I get to lay on the couch now with the baby and do that. So he's in a really good mindset, but his journey's been an incredible one. And I think the big factor in his career, and even if you spoke to Sam, I think you would acknowledge that the biggest thing was moving in with Travis Boak and just put him on a different. He may have been going down this way, and Boakey just corrected him and tinkered it out. And to Sam's credit, like, you've got to want to do that yourself as well. You can be forced to move in with someone and do different stuff, but unless you want to make those changes as an individual, you don't. So what he went through his rehab, and the physio's there and the medical team, he's obviously worked really closely with them. They said to him, like, 10 months' time is April. So you can be back sort of the end of April next year. So you think maybe around 7 or 8 he'll be aiming to get back into the fold, and he'll come back bigger, better and stronger. And as you said, he goes, man, bros, I was just ripping it up. And I said, you were dominating. Like, he was clearly Port Adelaide's best player at halftime by a long way.
Oh, yeah, and I think he was the person I spoke about at halftime. Like, what he'd done in that second quarter was fantastic. He just lifted the team.
Yeah.
And he looks like he does that, whether it even is not just impacting the scoreboard, but his defensive work in that forward half.
Yeah, his pressure, like, he certainly lifts them, and he hits hard. He hits when you get hit, you've been hit by him. And so it's probably him and Butters would be the spiritual leaders, so to speak. So you've got Connor, obviously, as a captain there, and Sam's in the leadership group. You're seeing Ken grab those leaders at quarter time and give them a rev up, and Sam was the one that sort of lifted definitely in that second quarter. So
that's what I interviewed Kenny at half time. I said, what'd you say to him? He said, just demanded honesty. He said, I was honest with him.
Yeah.
And so I think he hit him between the eyes with what he needed from him. When post-game I was sort of thinking about Sam, what he did in the game, it made me sort of think, who are those players in the league that if you chuck the ball in a cage and said, get it out. So not the cleanest players. If it was a muddy day cage match and you put the ball in, who's the players? And Sam seems like one of those. Just
he'd be definitely there.
Get the ball out of the cage. So I thought I'd see if I can come up with a top five.
Top five cage fighters.
Yeah, cage fighters with the footy. Who would you put in? So I had, I'd say Sam at 5.
Yeah, did definitely be in there.
I had my number 4. I thought Matt Rao.
Yeah, Matty Rao. He's a contested beast,
and just goes hard.
Puts his head over it,
and just like doesn't say much, just gets it done.
Just no thrills.
No.
Even in the post game interview, he
gave Sarah yes, no, next week, 1 week at a time. We could talk about a few interviews like that at times, and that leaves you hanging. If you're going with a handful of questions, and you're sitting there and you think, well, we've got 2 minutes to fill, and they go yes, no, and you think, shit, I've still got ages to go yet. So all right, so 4, Matt Rao. I went Jack Viney at 3.
Yes, yeah.
I reckon so often over the last decade, there's times when Melbourne have needed the lift and they just chuck him in, whether it's to shut down the Oppo's best player or just to get it done.
Yeah, I think he's a good one. Tough, hard. We seen him do it a couple of weeks ago when Gold Coast jumped him in that first quarter. He went in the middle. He was the difference.
He was the difference. Celebrating game 250. At number 2, I've got Tom Liberatore.
Yeah.
I smile every week watching him. I think, geez, you have a crack.
He rips in, doesn't he? And not that he was on the outer, but he could have easily finished a couple of years ago, but he's just continued on and, he's done really, really well. And tough heart, and got personality. Even, did you see the Channel 7 after the game? Not that you probably watched it, but... He just walked Nick Riewoldt into this perfect, like, Roo was in there, turtleneck, slick hair, and he goes, I was running out with Dad. There was some really good footage of it. I was about 8 or 9, and he goes, I look like shit. I had this turtleneck and hair slicked back. Roo goes, plenty of character.
I see, I think I've mentioned before, a couple of times I've been at a little pub in Fitzroy, wander in there and just in the back, a little Tom and a couple of his mates sitting in the back having a couple of quiet pots.
He's the traditional old school football.
Scrapper.
80s would have suited him to a T.
Oh yeah, muddy grounds, cage match sort of situation, just absolutely whacking. So Sam Powell-Pepper at 5, Rao at 4, Viney at 3, Libba at 2. And I went, maybe, but I'm happy with this one. Dangerfield at 1.
Yep.
Or just that ballistic power.
I think, we spoke about where you'd put him if you needed him to win the game.
Yeah, you can play him forward as well, but
play him in the cage. Yeah. I think Paddy's still that, isn't he? Like if you were to unleash him,
we got to win. We have to win this contest. So not about scoring, but to have to win this contest, you just chuck him in there.
Yeah.
So I reckon they're the sort of players that felt.
There's a couple, I reckon, that like Sarong at Fremantle.
Yeah.
I think if you had to win the footy and put your head like in the hole, I think he was getting tagged even potentially last week, and he sort of had 10. The game was on the line at 3/4 time, and he went and still heavy tag. It might have been St Kilda, was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Went and had 8 in the last quarter, and
Well, I saw it.
I'd have him on the fringe. Not whether he slips into the top 5, but he'd be certainly there.
So I didn't have him pictured as a cage match sort of operator,
reckon,
but okay.
Get the fingers in the eyes and
right, real old school.
So, yeah.
And others.
Well, I'm
because
just
if you're going old school, in the category of Diesel Williams.
Yeah, well, the ones that
whack
spring to mind, like Vossi was the one at
Oh,
Brisbane.
yeah, if
Like,
we're going
if you go back to the old
veterans,
school,
yeah.
I'm just quickly going through the teams. Like at the Lions, it's probably not a cage fighter, but like if you wanted someone to go and win a hardball, it'd be Lockie. I think every day of the week in that shoebox type scenario. Hawthorn, Sydney. I think you've covered it pretty well. I think your top 5s.
Your cage match operators, and I thought that was on the back of Sam going down. What he did for the team, thought it was just fantastic. Viney we saw a couple of weeks ago. Rao we see every week. Libba game 250.
Yeah.
And I just Hall of Famer Danger. I thought
it's a very very good top 5. I would have thought, but. Moving on, you speak about injuries as well. Papley, the other one out of it, he won't win the Rising Star and he won't win it next year as well. Number 1 pick, Layla, he went down with a real bad hamstring again. He couldn't move early on in that contest.
Nah, that's devastating. So, what are we, 7 weeks out from the end of the season? That's him done.
You probably put him on ice, I would have thought. But the gap, and I know that you're obviously big on Tasmania. We've got an election in a couple of weeks, and I was brought it up a couple of weeks ago. The gap between the best and the worst and the struggling teams, I think that was evident on the weekend. Again, with Richmond, they were near 100 points down, almost 3/4 time. They found a way to kick a few goals late in that game. West Coast again, uncompetitive at times. Yeah. It's getting bigger almost, isn't it?
It is, but if you were a Richmond fan, I think you'd be comfortable where you're at. I mean, outside the fact you've won your 3 flags over the last decade sort of thing. So, no one's going to feel sorry for him. But I think with what's coming through, there's some promising signs there still, albeit the gap between their best and worst is huge, but you've got so many young players in. I would think Tigers fans would be pretty happy with where things are at.
Yeah, I think so. I think even North Melbourne, they've improved. Like, yes, they end up losing by 49 points or whatever it was, but they were in that game for 3 quarters. Larkey was outstanding. He kicked 4 in the first quarter.
Yeah.
So,
but West Coast, though, to your point, West Coast, they've got a hell of a long way to go. So, and if you do lose Reid and Allen, and you're probably going to lose both over the next 12 months, 18 months. It's a long way back for a powerful club.
They're
going to have to start this rebuild is going to have to be extraordinary, and as always, and you lost a Hall of Famer in McGovern as well. Yeah. You've lost Barras. It's just going to be a massive rebuild, and that's one club that's going to have to be lucky with injuries. Well, because they can't afford to lose their best players. Yo hasn't played since you played.
Yeah, and when he's at his best, he's absolutely
he's a star.
And we've seen him fight for that. I think it was a 2 or 3 year deal last year and extended and stay. But they're a couple of years off it, aren't they? Even being competitive. So
they are. At least. It's a hell of a long way back.
And they obviously up-traded to bring in guys. Kelly, they tried to top up and win another flag. Don't think it really worked. Geelong would be licking their lips with the picks. They gave up a fair bit to get Liam Baker in as well. So they're certainly... They've got a long road in front of them, and they're going to have to develop as quickly as they can. The other teams that it's sort of dwindling there in no man's land. It's a little bit Essendon. They've had their injury concerns, but Carlton as well, and what they do, touched up again on the weekend by Collingwood.
Oh yeah, that was devastating for Carlton. Watching the Essendon game, and when we watch from afar, you don't always. I focus more on the key position players because that's where I sort of played. You focus probably a bit more on the midfield. Sam Durham, geez, he can play.
He can play.
Yeah, you talk about the cage matches. There was times in that first half watching him, the way he goes in, he gave a few free kicks away, which you don't mind at times, just invest in the future. But geez, he has a crack. He looks like he's a high-class competitive player.
I think so. I think they've got enough talent there. Obviously, Merritt does what he does. He had 40 on the weekend. Durham, Nick Martin's another one. So they've got a few on the edges. Their spine as well is reasonable. Caddy and those guys. Caddy's going to be a player in the future.
It was May, wasn't it? That had kicked the 3 goals. Archer May.
Archer, yeah. So
Derm's stepson.
Yeah.
But kicked 3 goals in about 5 minutes there.
So he was on the list, a couple of weeks ago, wasn't he? He was a mid-season.
Yeah, but you know what? He's ex-Richmond Twos player.
Right.
So he's ex-Richmond Twos. Durham was. D'Ambrosio played Twos at Richmond. There's a few who have gone through there.
There's enough talent, I think, around there to pick one or two, and particularly at those good clubs. That's what I think Tassie should look at as well early on. Look at those premiership teams, the guys that are in the VFL that are performing really well, that can't quite get in, that can be good, solid contributors at AFL level, just given the opportunity, right environment. Yeah,
so I'll tell you what will happen there. So like those, you'd like to better pick like whether it's Archer May or especially Durham and D'Ambrosio out of the VFL. But what will happen, so over the next couple of years in the VFL, there'll be, so Tassie hasn't all been ticked off yet, but the hope is we'll have still a bit to go.
2 weeks?
Yeah, still a bit to go. The hope is we'll have a VFL presence or VFL team over the next 2 years. And I think the opportunity would be for some of those VFL players that are 22, 21 years of age, haven't had their chance yet, but we get them to Tassie with the offer of some list spots for that cohort that come down now. There'll be some list spots up for grabs. So they might feel, well, I've struggled in the VFL via Richmond or SANFL to get drafted. This might be a different pathway where I can sort of go down to a place where they're going to list, it might be something like we give 4 rookie spots for that VFL cohort, basically. So they might feel that's a better vehicle to get them drafted and helps us as well with some mature age talent. So.
And question without notice, obviously Tassie going to be in the market for a senior coach. Let's quickly run through the coaching merry-go-round that could potentially happen at the end of the season. Yeah. Whether you think they're safe or in trouble. West Coast is obviously going to be safe first year.
Yeah.
Richmond, Uze is going to be safe.
Yeah.
Clarko, 1 more year.
Oh, yeah, they'd want to be better next year.
Better next year.
Yeah, he's safe for next year.
Safe for next year. Ross Lyon.
Yeah, I think they've got they appear, he'd want to be in a better position this time next year too. So he's the end of next year, he's no problems. Because I think they've got a clear pathway internally that they're following. So I think they're fully invested in Ross.
So he took over and they were sort of borderline top 8. And then
went in, I think, the start with.
Yeah.
And then floated in now.
Down to 15th. And it sounds like they may have a background succession plan that they're probably not going to announce with, is it Enright?
Yeah.
I think has sort of been earmarked to take over. Now we get to the interesting one. Simon Goodwin.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. He's been there a long time. They've just signed Pickett long term, who's a massive Goodwin fan, so sort of aligned himself there. But yeah, I think once you're at a club for an extended period, now you get a few credits for a premiership. But once you're getting past a decade, it's any time. So no, he's absolutely. He'll coach them next year, but under the pump. He'll
stay. So because I'm of the opinion that he may be burning under his seat. I think
the end of this year.
Yeah, because Melbourne, their list they were there to win it, and they probably should have. They've left themselves 1 or 2 short, I would have thought. I feel like they should have won. After they belted the Dogs in that grand final, it was like they'll probably win at least one of the next 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And they've gone straight sets, and then miss.
Yeah. Well, that's right. I think it'll be their list build, their list management will be interesting at the end of this year. What do they do while you still got some tradable assets?
Yeah. The hard thing is, like, the Oliver, he's, like, I know that you love him, and he's a great player when he's up and about.
No, absolutely.
No, I'm not. I think he is a star, but he's certainly dropped. His output's
he was
dropped.
A star.
Yeah, his output's dropped. Signed the long deal. So to move him on, though, no one's really going to want to take him with that contract unless Melbourne are paying part of it.
Yeah, they'd have to pay part of it, and you'd probably want to drop him into a very experienced, mature,
a Geelong type.
Yeah, that type. That feel they can control him. So yeah, no, reasonable point. And like Lever's another one. I think he's still got a year or 2 on his contract to go, and he's been in and out of the reserve. So no, tough one. But yeah, no, I think.
Safe for now.
I think that he's safe for now. But
just on the back of the Tassie are going to want to coach.
Yeah.
So you've got certain coaches that you could go and get now. I think like a Buckley, a Horse, Simpson, the ones that have been proven. Obviously Hinkley's out.
Yep.
So does a club beat you to the pinch almost and grab one? Brad Scott, Essendon.
Well, when they re-signed him last year.
I reckon he's got at least another year or 2 on his contract.
Oh, yeah. And I think absolute safe as houses.
Safe as houses?
Yeah.
I couldn't see him.
And mainly because of the injuries.
Yeah.
So they haven't had a back line. I mean, so many of their defenders have been out injured. And I think regardless of where you sit on the ladder, that gives you a certain amount of free passes. No, I think he's no problems whatsoever. And I think they will improve once they get a number of these players back.
Ex-coach of mine, ex-teammate of yours, Michael Voss in Carlton.
Well, he's at Carlton.
he's going to be tight, touch and go, isn't it, at the end of the year?
Well, it appears so. But, like, what frustrates me is, like, well, they haven't made the decision yet, I suppose. Twice in the last 2 years, they've decided he's the man.
Yeah.
So when they signed him and then they re-signed him, so twice they feel that he can coach, and with his feet under the desk for two years, they've seen he can coach, so they've signed him again. So I'd be staggered if they moved him on at the end of the year, really. Wouldn't you give it a go with doing the Damien Hardwick tweaking whether it's the assistant coaches or footy department, but trying a few things. The fact that they've assessed him twice and they feel he's the man. But yeah, it is Carlton, and they've gone down that path a few times before. But I think he'd be right.
They've had a few injuries as well, so you can make that sort of excuse. Like some of their good players. Walsh isn't available. Mackay hasn't been there, so. I'm not making excuses, but...
No, but is there a greater appreciation? Their list is unbalanced.
Yeah.
Like their TPP, their total player payments, is going to 5 players. And so it
goes to their spine.
Yeah, that's right. So if they're not absolutely flying, the second tiers... A lot of the second tiers are probably third tiers these days. So there is a gap.
Yeah.
So... Yeah, I think...
safe for now.
Yeah, well, he's not because he's at Carlton, how they're going. But I would like to see him as safe.
So they got Brisbane, obviously, on Thursday night. So
again, it just builds, doesn't it? It just builds. The pressure builds.
Keeps going.
And they need to be the old honourable loss, but it needs to be an honourable loss. If they get a smacking's not good. Like a big smacking's not good.
The thing in their favour, they're obviously off a 6-day break. Brisbane... I've touched on it a few times. Everyone off the 5-day break have really struggled this year. So Carlton, if they can somehow get up for it and pinch that one on Thursday night, it'll relieve pressure for 5 days.
Oh yeah,
until next week.
That'd be if they could roll Brisbane, that'd be huge,
massive.
You couldn't see it though on current form.
Not on current form. It'd be a huge upset. Port Adelaide have obviously. Josh Carr's coming in, so he'll take the reins. I think there'll be a bit of change there at Port Adelaide in game style-wise. I think he'll bring in his own own play somewhat. Obviously, he did mention that once finals were off the table, he may step away and let Kari take over. They're probably at that now. So whether that happens in the next week or two...
I reckon the chompers...
wasn't great footage.
Oh, it was hilarious. Well, maybe for some Port Adelaide supporters, I thought it was absolutely hilarious. Kenny putting the lolly chompers in there.
I think from an outsider's point of view, like it's not that big of a deal, and it's not neither here nor there. But I think the Port faithful would have seen it as this bloke's taking the piss.
Well, I'm not a socials operator. Was there anything on the
There was a bit of backlash.
Was there?
Yeah, there was a bit of backlash. Yeah, I think the AFL and maybe Fox posted it, and the comment section wasn't very favourable for Ken.
Right.
But that hasn't been favourable for Ken for the best part of or 5 years, for sure. Sydney, obviously, Cox has just taken over. I think they're getting...
He's fine.
Yeah, they're getting back to their best.
Yeah.
Fremantle's an interesting one. Longmuir.
Under the pump.
Where they're at, he went on the full-time contract, so it wouldn't tap on the shoulder now. They've got no payout or anything like that.
Well, that's I think we spoke at the start of the year. That's not as... Obviously, Kenny has been moved on and had the 12 months to serve on his contract. But the Longmuir one, it just wasn't a show of faith, I don't think.
No.
It was, outwardly, I received it as, look, we're not sure and we want to limit the risk. So we'll put you on this staff agreement.
6 years? Definitely 5.
Yeah.
It was definitely COVID.
It was COVID.
So 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So definitely, 5 or 6 years.
If they don't make finals,
if they fall away, and I just had a quick look when you mentioned them, Fremantle, whether they fall over or take a bit of pressure off. They got Hawthorn this week at home. So, if they lose that, Collingwood the week after. Obviously the derby after that, which we know funny things can happen, but it'd be very surprising. Very surprising. And then they've got Carlton, Port Adelaide away, Brisbane at home, Dogs away. So their last 3, their next 2 and their last 3 are tough. So their season could potentially be over in the next 2 weeks.
And so they've got 10 wins at the moment. You need 14.
Yeah.
So they got to get 4.
So you would give them,
and they got the worst percentage.
West Coast and Carlton.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be in the boat of giving him Port Adelaide. Yeah, the way Port played last week, and we know that they had a couple of injuries, I wouldn't be confident to sit here and tick. I wouldn't be confident to tip them against Brisbane or the Dogs or Collingwood. So they're going to have to pinch.
So how many you got them? You're giving them
I'm
2
giving
wins.
them two more.
2 wins, so that would be 12 wins. They miss.
Well, Hawthorn
Yeah.
this week, they could win that.
Yeah, they have to win that.
That's sort of a 50-50. Collingwood, they lose.
Yeah.
West Coast, they win. Carlton, they win. Port Adelaide away, I don't give them yet, confidently. Brisbane at home, I think Brisbane probably 2 weeks before finals will want to win it, up and about, and the Dogs away in the last game. So I'm confidently sit here and give them 2 more.
With Port Adelaide and Hawthorn as their elimination finals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have to somehow pinch 1 or 2 on the way home. So that hot seat might be...
Yeah, no, that's up for discussion. He wouldn't, as you said, after 5 or 6 years, he wouldn't want to miss the finals.
And then after that, I think we're pretty safe with the rest of them. Obviously, unless something dramatic happened at the Adelaide Crows, it'd be Nixie there for 6 years without finals. I think they were going to make finals, so I think he's safe.
They're playing finals.
Besides that, I think Kingsley's safe, Hardwick's safe, Beveridge we just seen re-sign.
Just signed, yeah.
Sam Mitchell's fine. Chris Scott could sign a 100-year contract if he wanted. He could anywhere in the comp.
Well, that's right. So there's a few there's a couple that are under the pump, and over the next couple of years there might be a couple drop out.
It's those teams from 9 to 15, realistically, just to circle back, that are probably under the most pump. So Ross Lyon, Goodwin, Brad Scott in sort of 12 months' time, Vossi and Longmuir.
There's going to be... well, the reality is that Tassie over the next... Well, from now, we continually are discussing everything from footy managers, obviously our list build and recruiting staff have been put in place. There'll be a couple more spots there. GM of football operations is a key appointment. And then, mapping out that coach, that senior coach.
Well, the other thing with it as well is they talk about July being big boy month, but August is moving month where assistant coaches need to be informed whether they're going to be re-signed or not. So there'll be a lot of movement, I think, in the next month around those assistant coaches. And we've seen it in the past where coaches have become footy managers and whatnot. So there's a lot of overlap in those roles. So
absolutely. Well, you talk about the experience of a senior coach. And so we won't talk about Kenny because we know he's finishing. There's nothing to suggest that a senior coach like Kenny wouldn't be a good GM of footy operations. Like that, they've run, big teams of players. I suppose the only thing there, if you were going down that path, you're establishing a football department. So you'd want to have some good detail to how you go about it. So, but not ruling out a senior coach as a GM of footy operations. But there's some of the names you mentioned, there's some great candidates that, rest assured, they've all been up on the whiteboard at different stages. And there's, as we've heard from Brendan Gale a couple of months ago, there's been some discussions going on. There'll be a committee, I suppose, a selection committee to, pull together what the coach we want will look like. And then we'll put a committee together about who will go and find that person. So, that's all underway now. And because when you're having discussions with player agents or marquee players, one of the early questions, when you're speaking about a marquee player, they know the number's going to be fine.
Yeah,
they'll get paid. But one of the key questions is, well, who's going to coach me?
Yeah.
So you couldn't imagine signing, someone on $2.5 million, $3 million, and they don't know who the coach is going to be. Yeah. So that's going to be a key component that we need to get in place.
Get in place as quick as you can. You're not going to, he's not leaving obviously, but you're not going to be able to go poach a Bontempelli and say, oh, we don't have a coach. If you're going to pitch to I'm just using Bontempelli as the best player in the comp. If you're going to pitch to them, you're going to want a coach to go and a coach almost in the meeting to sell the dream to them as well.
No, absolutely. So. And that's where, whether it's, so many of these coaches are coaching now. So ideally speaking, if you're taking Bontempelli to Tassie or Nick Dacos, as he said, he would entertain going to Tassie, which my phone lit up at the time.
Fell off the chair.
And especially when Craig McRae said, well, if he goes, I'm going too. I go, right,
we'll do the double package.
So, but if you're taking a Bontempelli to Tassie on bye weekend, be showing him where the facility is going to be or getting built or completed, show him about the stadium, and ideally you've got the coach there as well.
Yeah.
So that's, ideally speaking, but that's the way we're tracking.
The way forward. Now, let's jump into round 18, a quick preview before we wrap up the show. And, Ryan and Jack, I hope they've enjoyed their holidays because they may be on a longer extended one. But there's 4 games that are going to have finals ramifications, I think, out of the weekend. First v 7th, which is Friday night, which you'll be doing down the Gold Coast there. The Gold Coast Suns take on Collingwood. Massive game.
Huge game. Another sellout. As you said, it's probably the first Friday night game and genuine. Well, first Friday night game and a massive game up against the Pies. So it's already a sellout, I'm pretty sure. This will show the maturity of the Gold Coast. They stepped up a little bit on the weekend. Again, we know it was Essendon, undermanned, some young kids. But late in quarters, in quarter 1, 2, 3, in that last minute from centre bounce, they scored.
They flexed their muscles.
Absolutely, really important that they did that. So, I'm looking forward to this one. You would think Collingwood would win that, but they're the best team in the comp. But this will be a huge one. We're
not punting, obviously. You're allowed a tip. You lean towards Collingwood to win that.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah,
I couldn't imagine tipping against Collingwood for the rest of the year.
No, I think if you did a ladder predictor, they just win every game.
Didn't you add them 80 points or something?
Yeah, I don't think. How do they lose? I don't think they can. There's not many games that you would look at and go, oh, that they'll lose that game. What did I have them finished on?
I reckon you had them that far clear.
Yeah, they were. Yeah,
it was ridiculous.
They're going to be hard to stop, I think. The Pies on the way home. The other game is actually the next game of the round. The Western Bulldogs take on Adelaide Crows at Marvel Stadium, which is 6v3. So the ramifications there are potentially, well, the Dogs, if they win it, they jump the Adelaide Crows or thereabouts on percentage, depending on how much they win by, or the Crows can nearly secure a top 4 spot with that win.
Yeah, I can't remember which one game was. Is this the Ballarat game transferred to Marvel?
I think so, yeah. It is, yeah.
Yeah, because the stadium up there, Mars Stadium's not quite ready. Cracking game. Yeah, I'm backing the Dogs here. Like the Dogs, they've got some issues down back, but yeah, they're looking very, very, very good.
They've got enough weapons through the midfield and then in the front half to be so scary. So they can score heavily, which we've seen them do against North Melbourne on Thursday night.
And a lot less reliant on their stars as they were. I mean, Bontempelli
doesn't have to have 40 and kick 4.
Yeah, Fraser just jumps up and goes well. Sam Darcy, he had an off day, didn't he, on the weekend? Scrapped through with 4 or something. Yeah.
That was a genuine shootout early in that one. Norton and Larky at the other end. It was good. The 2 key posts, which we haven't seen probably since your heyday, Lynchy, when you were kicking bags of goals.
Yeah. When I was getting bags kicked on me.
But the Crows can win it because of those key tall forwards and what we've seen Isaac Rankin do yesterday, kick the 5. They've got weapons in the front half. So the Dogs, you said they've got the issues down back. If the Crows give their forwards enough supply, they can win that game of footy on the road.
That's where old coaches Lee Matthews would be talking about. So as a big forward, unless you're marking it as a big forward, you just become a slow defender.
Yeah.
And so it would be very reliant on Tex and these guys actually grabbing the ball and competing well. Because if the Dogs defenders can neutralise that, be moving very quickly out of the back line.
Now, I haven't spoken to you about this, but I'd imagine you might have a flight out of the Gold Coast or Brisbane early Saturday morning down to NG Stadium, which is, again, another big game, 4th versus 8th. So the Giants take on Geelong down there. Ramifications, obviously, there. If the Giants cough this one up, all of a sudden their top 8 position becomes very nervous and Geelong can jump back up and potentially take a top 2 spot pending what happens with Brisbane.
This would be a great game. So I get back from the Gold Coast, early flight down to Western Sydney. This would be a huge game. I think the Giants can do this at their best. So this would be a great test. But you reckon the Fremantle Dockers supporters will be back for Geelong?
They'll be cheering for Geelong to get home. That's obviously Saturday afternoon and into the lead up to the 4th game, which is the last one, which is the Fremantle game.
Yeah.
I think the Giants may win that before we move on as well. But Fremantle take on Hawthorn, so 9th versus 5th. This is a flip of the coin, I would have thought.
They've just got to win it. They've absolutely got to win this, Freo. And they've got the talent through that midfield. They've got their forward targets that, they didn't have great days on the weekend. Tracy looked like he presented all right. Amos had a quiet one. Voss got subbed out. Obviously still going the 2 big ruckmen. So, they've just got to get it done. They've got to, but it'll be a good test because they don't move the ball that quickly. Hawks, they zip it around. So they want to sort out their centre bounce especially, otherwise they will lose.
Yeah, it's a genuine flip of the coin. You're probably leading a Freo with that home ground advantage, but Hawthorn going over there, you wouldn't be surprised the way they're playing if they win.
Imagine Perth, it was wet a couple of weeks ago, but dry conditions, nice big ground. Geez, the Hawks could actually get zipping up and around that ground and cause some issues. So no, I got my gut feel Hawks.
Leaning towards Hawthorn. So the big 4 games, we've got Lynchy going with Collingwood, the Dogs, the Giants, and the Hawks. So I think it shapes up as a really big round of footy, and we'll know much more about all teams and where they sit. If Sydney beat St Kilda and a couple of those teams lose, I might be able to get Sydney into the 8 and get a few more people on board by the end of round 18.
Did you get much support?
Not really, no. Especially after they lost against the Dogs. But they were good against the Dogs.
They were good. They just don't get any points for it.
If they had just fallen in, it would have been nice. But we'll wrap up the show there, Lynchy. As I said, Ryan and Jack away today. They may not be back after the performance of you today. Absolutely dominated in that seat. But thanks for joining us again.
Well, good on you, mate.
Thanks for listening to Ned's AFL Unpopular Opinions. Enjoyed the podcasts? Remember to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.